She was just buying groceries when she heard it. A small, terrified sob echoing through the crowded mall. Most people walked past, too busy with their own lives to notice. But she stopped. Something about that sound made her heart skip a beat. The child couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Tears streaming down his face, clutching a worn teddy bear like his life depended on it. Lost in a sea of strangers, each passing second making his world feel bigger and more terrifying. You know that moment when you have to choose between minding your own business and doing what's right? She faced that choice, and in that split second, she made a decision that would change everything. She knelt down to his level, her voice soft and reassuring. "Hey there, buddy. Are you looking for someone?" The little boy nodded through his tears, unable to form words through his panic. What happened next would seem ordinary to anyone watching. She took his hand, walked him to customer service, and waited with him until his frantic mother arrived. 20 minutes of her day, that's all it was. The mother's relief was overwhelming. She hugged her son so tight it looked like she might never let go. Through tears of gratitude, she thanked the woman over and over, but the woman just smiled, said it was nothing, and went back to her shopping. She thought that was the end of it. Just another day, another small act of kindness in a world that often forgets to be kind. How wrong she was. The next morning, her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. The voice on the other end would deliver news that would leave her speechless. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" the voice asked. "This is David Chen, owner of Westfield Mall. I need to speak with you about what happened yesterday." Her heart raced. Had she done something wrong? Was there some policy about helping lost children? The next words out of his mouth would change her life forever. "I've been looking for you all morning." David Chen's voice carried an unusual urgency. "What you did yesterday? You have no idea what it means." Sarah's mind raced. What could the mall owner possibly want with her? "That little boy you helped," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "That was my grandson, Lucas. And the woman you reunited him with? That was my daughter, Emma." The silence on the line was deafening. Think about the last time you helped a stranger. Did you ever wonder what ripple effects your actions might have created? Sarah was about to find out that some ripples turn into waves. "Mr. Chen, I just did what anyone would do," Sarah said, uncomfortable with the attention. But David Chen disagreed. "No, Ms. Mitchell, that's where you're wrong. We have security footage. Hundreds of people walked past Lucas. Hundreds. You were the only one who stopped." The truth hit her like a cold wind. In a mall filled with people, she was the only one who saw a crying child and decided that her schedule, her comfort, her own concerns could wait. What does that say about our world? What does that say about us? David's next words painted a picture that would haunt Sarah. "Emma has been struggling since her husband passed away 6 months ago. She's been doing her best. But yesterday, she had a panic attack in the food court. That's when Lucas wandered off." Sarah's throat tightened. She remembered the look of sheer terror in Emma's eyes when she finally found her son. Now she understood it was more than just a mother's fear. It was the fear of someone who had already lost too much. "Emma hasn't slept through the night since the accident," David continued. "She wakes up in cold sweats, terrified that she'll lose Lucas too. Yesterday was her worst nightmare coming true. And then you appeared. You never know what battles people are fighting. That frazzled mother in the mall might be carrying grief heavier than you can imagine. That lost child might be all she has left in the world. After you left, Emma couldn't stop talking about you. She said you didn't just find Lucas, you stayed with him, kept him calm, made him laugh even. She said you treated him like he was your own child." David's voice cracked slightly. Sarah remembered those 20 minutes differently now. She had told Lucas stories about the teddy bear's adventures, asked him about his favorite cartoons, even played a little game of I Spy to keep his mind off being scared. Small things, human things, things that apparently meant everything. "I need to tell you something about our family." David's voice grew heavy with the weight of untold stories. "My wife and I came to this country with nothing but hope and 2 suitcases. We built this mall from the ground up, working 18-hour days, believing in the American dream." Sarah listened, unsure where this was heading. Sometimes the most profound conversations begin with the most unexpected confessions. This was one of those times. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. This mall became our empire. But success, Ms. Mitchell, success can be a terrible master. I became so focused on building something to leave behind that I forgot to be present for the people I was building it for. Have you ever achieved everything you thought you wanted only to realize you'd lost what truly mattered along the way? David Chen had learned this lesson the hard way, and now he was sharing it with a stranger who had shown his grandson kindness. When Emma's husband died, I threw myself even deeper into work. I thought providing financial security was enough. I thought being successful meant being a good father, a good grandfather. I was wrong. The regret in his voice was palpable. Yesterday, when I saw that security footage, when I saw you kneeling down to Lucas's level, taking time you didn't have to give, showing compassion you weren't obligated to show, I saw everything I had failed to be. The weight of his words hung in the air. How often do we measure our worth in achievements and possessions, forgetting that our true legacy lives in the hearts we touch and the love we share? Emma called me last night, David continued. For the first time since the funeral, she wasn't crying. She was talking about you, about how there are still good people in the world, about how maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. She had no idea that 20 minutes of her time had meant so much. But isn't that always the way? We never truly know how our smallest actions might save someone else's world. You gave my daughter hope again, Ms. Mitchell. You reminded her that strangers can be angels, that kindness still exists, that Lucas will grow up in a world where people stop to help. Do you understand what that means to a grieving mother? The question hung between them, requiring no answer, because sometimes the most profound gifts we give are the ones we don't even realize we're giving. Sometimes, just being human is enough to restore someone else's faith in humanity. I've made a decision, David said, his voice firm with newfound resolve. I want to offer you something, not as payment. Kindness can't be bought, but as a partnership in something bigger than both of us. Sarah's mind reeled. Partnership? What could he possibly mean? Life has a way of taking unexpected turns when we least expect them, and this was about to be one of those moments that divide life into before and after. I've been thinking about this all night, David continued. This mall sees thousands of people every day. Families, children, elderly people who need help. But we've become a place of transactions, not connections. You showed me what we're missing. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I want to create a new position at Westfield Mall. Chief Community Officer. Someone who ensures we're not just a shopping center, but a place where humanity thrives. And I want you to be that person. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, who had been struggling to make ends meet, who had been rejected from job after job, who had helped a child simply because it was right, was being offered a position that didn't even exist until this moment. Mr. Chen, I don't have experience in mall management. I don't have a business degree. But David cut her off with a gentle laugh. You have something no degree can teach. You have a heart that sees need and responds without calculation. Think about the qualifications we list on resumes. Years of experience, technical skills, educational achievements. But what about compassion? What about the ability to see a crying child and stop everything to help? Where does that fit on a CV? Your job would be simple, David explained. Create programs that connect people, safe spaces for lost children, support groups for grieving families, community events that remind us we're all human. Turn this mall from a place where people shop into a place where people belong. Sarah's hands trembled. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a chance to transform her single act of kindness into a revolution of compassion that could touch thousands of lives. Emma wants to be involved too, David added. She wants to use her experience to help other single parents. She says if one person like you could change her darkest day, imagine what a whole community of caring people could do. The possibility hung in the air like morning sunshine breaking through storm clouds. What if every place of business became a place of humanity? What if kindness was as common as commerce? I need you to understand something. David's voice grew serious. This isn't charity. This is me recognizing that my mall, my life's work, has been missing its soul, and yesterday you showed me exactly where to find it. Sarah's story spread through the mall like wildfire. Employees who had worked there for years suddenly had tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of moments when they wished someone had stopped to help. The security guard who watched the footage over and over, wondering why he hadn't noticed. The janitor who confessed he'd seen Lucas but assumed someone else would help. What is it about one act of kindness that can awaken something dormant in all of us? Why does it take seeing someone else be human to remember our own humanity? I need to think about this, Sarah had told David, but the truth was her heart had already decided. That night she lay awake thinking about all the Lucases out there, lost, scared, hoping someone would stop. All the Emmas, overwhelmed, grieving, needing to know they're not alone. The next day, she walked through the mall with new eyes. She saw the elderly man struggling with heavy bags while people rushed past. The teenage girl sitting alone, clearly upset, invisible to the crowds. The overwhelmed father trying to manage 3 young children while his baby cried. Each person was a story. Each moment was an opportunity. How many chances to change someone's day, someone's life, do we walk past without noticing? How many small miracles do we miss because we're too busy to see? Sarah found herself at the spot where she'd first heard Lucas crying. The same crowds, the same noise, the same rush of daily life. But something was different now. She was different. That moment of choice had awakened something in her that couldn't go back to sleep. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. "Saw your story on the news. Mom would be so proud." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her mother, who had passed 2 years ago, had always said, "The world changes one kindness at a time, sweetheart. Never be too busy to be kind." She thought about her mother's words, about David's offer, about Emma's gratitude, about Lucas's tear-stained face transforming into a smile. Sometimes life presents us with moments that feel like destiny dressed in ordinary clothes. The food court was bustling with lunch crowds. Sarah watched families eating together, friends laughing, strangers sharing tables when space was tight. This could be more than a mall. It could be a community, a place where no child stays lost for long, where no parent grieves alone, where humanity isn't scheduled but spontaneous. That's when she saw her, Emma, sitting with Lucas at a small table. The boy was chattering happily, showing his mother something on his tablet. Emma looked up, their eyes met, and the gratitude that passed between them needed no words. Lucas noticed her too, his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Mommy, look! It's the nice lady, the one who helped me." He was already running toward Sarah before Emma could stop him, his little arms wrapping around Sarah's legs in the purest hug she'd ever received. "I've been hoping to see you again," Emma said, approaching slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I never got to properly thank you. I was such a mess that day." Sarah knelt down to Lucas's level again, just as she had done before, and the little boy beamed at her with pure joy. "You know what you taught me?" Emma continued, her voice steady but emotional, that it's okay to need help, that accepting kindness from strangers isn't weakness. "For months I've been trying to do everything alone, to be strong for Lucas. But strength isn't about doing it alone, is it? Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone isn't just help in their moment of need, but permission to be vulnerable, to be human, to need others." Sarah had given Emma that gift without even knowing it. Lucas tugged on Sarah's sleeve, his eyes bright with excitement. "Guess what? Grandpa says you might work here. Does that mean I'll see you every time we come to the mall?" The innocent hope in his voice could have melted the coldest heart. "Your grandpa offered me a very special job," Sarah said gently, "to help make sure no one in this mall ever feels alone or scared." Lucas's face grew serious, the way only children can when they're processing something important. "Like how you helped me?" he asked. Sarah nodded, and Lucas threw his arms around her neck. "Then you have to say yes, you have to. There might be other kids who get lost and need a nice lady like you." Out of the mouths of babes comes the purest truth. Lucas, in his 5-year-old wisdom, understood something that adults often forget. The world needs more people who stop to help, who see tears and respond with kindness, who make time for humanity in their busy days. Emma touched Sarah's shoulder gently. "My father told me about his offer. I want you to know that whatever you decide, you've already changed our lives. But selfishly, I hope you say yes. This mall, this community, it needs what you have." "What's that?" Sarah asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "The ability to see people, really see them. Not as customers or strangers or obstacles in your path, but as human beings who might need just one moment of compassion to change their entire day." Emma's voice grew stronger with each word. Sarah looked around the food court again. An elderly woman sat alone at a corner table. A young mother juggled a crying baby while trying to eat. A businessman stared at his phone. his untouched lunch growing cold, worry etched on his face. Each one a story, each one a possibility, each one deserving of the same compassion she'd shown Lucas. What if this mall could become a place where loneliness came to die, where community wasn't just a buzzword but a living, breathing reality? That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, David Chen's business card in her hand, the weight of decision pressed on her shoulders, but it wasn't a burden. It was possibility dressed in responsibility. Her phone had been buzzing all day with messages from friends who'd seen the news story. Each one said the same thing in different words. This is so you. But was it? Could one moment of instinctive kindness really translate into a career of cultivating compassion? Could she take what came naturally in a single instance and turn it into something systematic, sustainable, transformative? She thought about her current job, data entry at an insurance company. Anonymous, routine, safe. No one would ever write a news story about her spreadsheets. No child would remember her pivot tables 20 years from now. She was comfortable being invisible, but comfort and purpose are rarely roommates. What holds us back from stepping into the life we're meant to live? Fear of failure? Fear of success? Or fear that we might actually be capable of the extraordinary things life is calling us toward? Her neighbor knocked on the door, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson who'd lived next door for 15 years. "Saw you on the news, dear," she said, her eyes twinkling. "About time the world noticed what I've always known about you." Sarah invited her in for tea, grateful for the distraction, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't there to distract. She was there to push. "You know, I was a teacher for 40 years, she began. "Want to know the secret to recognizing a born educator?" "What's that?" Sarah asked, already suspecting where this was going. "They can't help but teach. Put them in any situation, and they'll find someone to help learn something. You, my dear, are a born helper. Put you anywhere, and you'll find someone who needs compassion." Fighting that nature is like asking a bird not to fly. The truth of it hit Sarah like a gentle lightning bolt. Every job she'd ever had, she'd become the person colleagues came to with problems. Every social situation, she'd gravitate toward whoever seemed to need a friend. It wasn't a choice, it was who she was. "But what if I fail?" Sarah voiced the fear that had been dancing at the edges of her mind. "What if I can't create the kind of change David envisions? What if I let them down?" Mrs. Patterson laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Honey, the only way to fail at being yourself is to try being someone else. That mall doesn't need a perfect program director. It needs someone who sees a crying child and can't walk away." After Mrs. Patterson left, Sarah found herself looking at photos on her phone. Pictures from various moments in her life where she'd made a difference without trying. The company picnic where she'd organized games for the shy kids. The birthday party where she'd noticed the one child without a present and discreetly shared hers. Pattern recognition is a funny thing. Sometimes we need distance to see that what we call coincidence is actually calling. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, standing nervously at Sarah's door. "I'm sorry to bother you," she began, "but are you the woman from the mall? The one who helped the little boy?" Sarah nodded, curious about this stranger seeking her out. What happened next would remind her that stories of kindness create ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. "My name is Ashley," the woman continued. "I was at the mall that day. I saw you with that little boy. I was one of the people who walked past." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I've been thinking about it ever since." She pulled out her phone, showing Sarah a picture of a young boy, maybe 7 years old. "This is my son, Tyler. He has autism. Last year he got separated from me at a theme park. For 20 minutes I couldn't find him. Those were the longest 20 minutes of my life." Sarah's heart clenched, imagining the terror. Ashley continued, "A woman found him. She stayed with him, kept him calm even though he was having a meltdown. She waited with him until security could find me. I never got her name, never got to properly thank her. When I saw you with that boy, it all came flooding back, how one person's kindness saved the worst day of my life. And then I realized, I walked past. I saw a crying child, and I walked past. I've become someone who assumes someone else will help." The confession hung heavy in the air. How many of us have become bystanders in our own lives, waiting for someone else to be the hero, forgetting that we all have the capacity to stop, to help, to care. "I came here to tell you something," Ashley said, determination replacing the shame in her voice. What you did woke something up in me. Yesterday I saw an elderly man struggling with his groceries. For the first time in years I stopped. I helped. It felt like remembering who I used to be. Sarah reached out and squeezed Ashley's hand. We all get busy. We all forget sometimes. The important thing is remembering again. That's why I had to find you, Ashley said, to tell you that your kindness is contagious. My husband couldn't believe I tracked down a stranger's address just to say thank you, but I needed you to know. You didn't just help one little boy, you reminded all of us watching what we're supposed to be doing here. After Ashley left, Sarah sat in stunned silence. She'd thought her action was contained to one moment, one child, one grateful mother. But kindness, it seems, is like light. It touches everything in its path, even things we never knew were in shadow. Her phone rang. David Chen. Ms. Mitchell, I hope I'm not being too pushy, but I wanted you to know something. Since the news story aired, we've had over 100 calls from people wanting to volunteer at the mall, to be part of whatever we create. Your single act has already started something. The question is, will you help us see it through? Sarah stood in the mall's administrative office, facing a room full of executives who looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. David Chen had called an emergency board meeting to present his vision, with Sarah as the centerpiece. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the notes she'd prepared the night before. Ladies and gentlemen, David began, I want you to meet the woman who showed me what our mall has been missing. Not better stores or fancier decorations, but humanity. Basic, simple humanity. One board member, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, interrupted. With all due respect, David, we run a business, not a charity. How does hiring someone to be nice improve our bottom line? It was the question Sarah had feared, the collision between compassion and capitalism. But before she could respond, David pulled up a presentation on the screen. Sales figures from the past week, up 12%. Social media engagement, up 300%. All since the story broke. People aren't just shopping here, David explained. They're coming here hoping to be part of something meaningful. 3 stores have reported customers specifically mentioning they came because they heard about what happened. This isn't just good humanity, it's good business. But Sarah knew it was more than numbers. It was about the security guard who'd started greeting families with children more warmly. It was about the food court workers who'd begun keeping an eye out for anyone who looked lost or distressed. Without any formal program, change was already happening. May I say something? Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. The room turned to her. I understand your concerns. A week ago, I was nobody special. Just another person trying to make it through the day. But that little boy reminded me of something we've all forgotten. She paused, meeting each skeptical gaze. We spend so much time in places like this, malls, offices, stores, but we've forgotten they're not just buildings, they're communities. Every person who walks through those doors is carrying something, joy, pain, fear, hope. What if we acknowledge that? The stern board member leaned forward. And how exactly do you propose we acknowledge that in a practical sense? Sarah had spent all night thinking about this. Simple changes that cost almost nothing but could mean everything. A quiet room where overwhelmed parents can take a break. Volunteers who walk the mall looking for anyone who might need help. Partnership with local services for people in crisis. Making kindness as much a part of our infrastructure as escalators and air conditioning. And the return on investment? Another member asked. Sarah thought of Ashley, of the 100 volunteers who'd called, of Lucas's smile. The return is a generation of children who grow up believing strangers will help them when they're lost. Parents who know they're not alone. A community that chooses to shop where they feel valued as humans, not just consumers. Can you put a price on that? The room fell silent. David Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Sometimes the most radical business decision is simply choosing to be human. 2 weeks later, Sarah walked through the mall wearing her new badge, Chief Community Officer. It felt surreal, like wearing a costume for a play she hadn't auditioned for. But life rarely asks if we're ready for the roles it assigns us. It simply presents the stage and waits to see if we'll perform. Her first initiative had been simple. Kindness ambassadors. Volunteers who wore bright yellow shirts and walked the mall during peak hours looking for anyone who might need assistance. The response had been overwhelming. Retired teachers, stay-at-home parents, college students, all wanting to be part of something that mattered. Sarah, a voice called out. It was Marcus, one of the first volunteers, a veteran who'd struggled to find purpose after returning from deployment. "You've got to see this." He led her to the food court where a small crowd had gathered. In the center, one of their ambassadors, a grandmother named June, was sitting with a teenage girl who was clearly upset. June wasn't just comforting her, she was teaching nearby teenagers how to recognize signs of distress in their peers. "This is what happens when you give people permission to care," Marcus said, his eyes shining. June found out the girl was being bullied at school. Now she's not just helping one kid, she's creating a network of kids who'll look out for each other. This was beyond what Sarah had imagined. She'd thought about helping lost children and overwhelmed parents, but kindness, once unleashed, has its own intelligence. It finds the wounds we didn't even know existed and applies itself like medicine. Emma appeared at her side, Lucas in tow. Over the past 2 weeks, Emma had become Sarah's unofficial partner, using her marketing background to spread the word about their programs. "The meditation room is ready," she announced. "Want to see?" They'd converted an unused storage space into a quiet sanctuary. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, a small play area for children. A place where overstimulated kids could decompress, where anxious parents could breathe, where anyone could step out of the chaos for a moment of peace. "This is beautiful," Sarah whispered, watching as a father entered with his autistic son who was clearly struggling with the sensory overload of the mall. Within minutes, the boy had calmed, playing quietly with sensory toys they'd provided. "You know what the best part is?" Emma said. 3 other malls have already called Dad wanting to implement similar programs. "You didn't just change our mall, Sarah. You're changing how people think about public spaces." But Sarah knew the truth. She hadn't changed anything. She'd simply reminded people of what they already knew, that we're all in this together, that a stranger's child crying is our responsibility too, that commerce without compassion is just elaborate loneliness. Lucas tugged on her sleeve. He'd been doing that a lot lately, a gesture that never failed to warm her heart. "Miss Sarah, look what I made." He held up a drawing. Stick figures holding hands around what was clearly meant to be the mall. "It's all the people you help." Sometimes the most profound feedback comes in crayon. 6 months had passed since that fateful day, when Sarah heard Lucas crying. The mall had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The physical changes were obvious. The meditation room, the children's safety zone, the volunteer station. But the invisible changes were what truly mattered. Sarah stood in the center court, watching the controlled chaos of a Saturday afternoon. She saw June, the grandmother volunteer, teaching a group of mall employees basic sign language to better assist deaf customers. She saw Marcus leading a support group for veterans in the community room. She saw teenagers who'd started as volunteers now training others. "You did this," David Chen said, appearing beside her. He'd aged in reverse these past months, the stress lines softening as he watched his life's work become something greater than commerce. "No," Sarah corrected gently. "We revealed what was always possible. People don't need permission to be kind, they need examples and opportunities." Her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart stop. It was from a reporter at a national news network. They wanted to do a feature on the Mall of Humanity, as people had started calling it. The movement was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, but with growth came challenges. Just yesterday, a cynical customer had accused them of using kindness as a marketing gimmick. Sarah had felt the sting of it, the doubt creeping in. Was that what this had become? A corporate strategy dressed in compassion? Then she'd watched that same cynical customer break down in tears when Marcus had noticed him struggling with news of his father's death, and simply sat with him, no agenda, no program, just one human recognizing another's pain. "We have a problem," Emma approached, looking concerned. "A good problem, but still a problem." She showed Sarah her tablet. 17 malls want to license our programs. Major corporations are calling. Everyone wants the secret formula to creating community. Sarah almost laughed. Secret formula? The formula was as old as humanity itself. See someone in need. Help them. Repeat. But she understood the deeper issue. How do you scale compassion without losing its authenticity? "What do you think we should do?" David asked. And Sarah realized that somewhere along the way, she'd become the expert in something that shouldn't require expertise. She thought about Lucas, about that moment of choice that had changed everything. We share everything. No licenses, no fees, no proprietary programs. We open source kindness. Create a network where malls, businesses, communities can share what works, support each other, learn together. Give it away for free? One of the board members who'd joined them asked, incredulous. You can't monetize what was never meant to be sold, Sarah replied. The minute we try to own kindness, we've lost it. Our success isn't measured in how much we can charge others, but in how many communities we can inspire to discover their own compassion. The discussion that followed would reshape not just their mall, but the entire industry's understanding of what public spaces could be. But in that moment, Sarah's attention was drawn to a familiar sound. A child crying. Without thinking, she moved toward the sound. It was a little girl, maybe 4 years old, separated from her parent, but before Sarah could reach her, she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. 3 different people were already converging on the child: a teenage volunteer, a mall employee, and a customer who'd simply noticed this. This was success. Not that Sarah was helping, but that she didn't need to. 1 year later, Sarah stood before an audience of 2,000 at a national retail conference. Behind her, a screen showed images from malls across the country. Meditation rooms, volunteer programs, community gardens and parking lots, support groups meeting in repurposed storage spaces. The Mall of Humanity model had spread to over 200 locations. A year ago, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies. I was just someone buying groceries. Today I stand here not as an expert in community building, but as proof that one moment of choosing compassion over convenience can ripple out in ways we never imagine. In the audience, she spotted familiar faces, David and Emma Chen beaming with pride. Marcus, now leading a national program for veteran volunteers. June, who'd started a grandmother's network that spanned 6 states. And in the front row, a special guest, Lucas, now 6, wearing a tiny yellow Kindness Ambassador shirt. People ask me for the business case for kindness, Sarah continued. They want ROI spreadsheets and profit projections. But I tell them about Margaret, an 82-year-old woman who now does her daily walks in our mall because she knows if she falls, someone will help. I tell them about James, a teenager who was planning to run away until one of our volunteers noticed his distress and connected him with help. She clicked to the next slide, sales figures from participating malls, all showing growth. Yes, kindness is good business, but more importantly, business can be good for kindness. Every place where people gather is an opportunity to build community. Every transaction can be transformed into connection. But here's what I really want you to understand. Sarah's voice grew passionate. This isn't about programs or protocols. It's about remembering that the person in front of you, customer, employee, stranger, is fighting battles you know nothing about. It's about choosing to see, choosing to stop, choosing to help. She looked directly at Lucas, who grinned and waved. A year ago, a 5-year-old boy got lost in a mall. Hundreds of people walked past him. I stopped, not because I was special, but because in that moment, I remembered what we're all here to do: take care of each other. The presentation continued with practical steps, implementation guides, success stories. But Sarah knew the real message had already been delivered. In boardrooms across the country, executives were remembering their own moments of being lost, being helped, being human. As she concluded, a hand shot up from the audience. What's next for the movement? Sarah smiled. That's the beautiful thing about kindness. It doesn't need a movement. It just needs people. What's next is whatever happens when you leave this room and see someone who needs help. What's next is your choice to stop or keep walking. The standing ovation that followed wasn't for Sarah. It was for the possibility she represented, that in a world of increasing disconnection, reconnection was not only possible but profitable, not only right, but practical. After the conference, Lucas ran up to her, clutching a new drawing. This one showed the earth covered in yellow dots. What's this? Sarah asked, kneeling to his level as she always did. It's all the places where people are learning to be kind, he explained with 6-year-old certainty. My teacher says it's called a movement, but I think it's just people remembering to be nice. Out of the mouths of babes once again. As Sarah packed up her materials, a text arrived from an unknown number. My daughter was lost in a mall today in Seattle. 3 people stopped to help within 30 seconds. She was back with me in under 2 minutes. Thank you for starting this. Sarah smiled, tears blurring her vision. She hadn't started anything. She'd simply stopped when a child cried. The rest was just humanity, doing what it does when given permission and possibility, taking care of its own. Walking out of the conference center, she overheard two CEOs talking. "It can't be that simple," one said. "There has to be more to it than just being kind," the other laughed. "Maybe that's the genius of it. We've spent so long making things complicated that we forgot the simple solutions. What if we just helped people? What if, indeed?" That night, Sarah received a call from David Chen. "I want you to know something," he said, emotion thick in his voice. "Emma sleeps through the night now. She says it's because she knows the world Lucas is growing up in is different than it was a year ago. Safer, kinder. That's because of you." "No," Sarah corrected softly. "That's because one little boy got lost and his tears reminded me what matters. He changed my life, David. I just passed it forward." 5 years have passed since that ordinary Tuesday when Sarah Mitchell heard a child crying in a mall. Today she stands in the United Nations Assembly Hall, addressing delegates from 47 countries about the Global Kindness Infrastructure Initiative. It sounds impossibly grand for something that started with 20 minutes and a teddy bear. Lucas, now 11, sits in the audience with his mother and grandfather. He's grown into a thoughtful boy who volunteers at his school as a buddy for younger children who feel lost or scared. When people ask him why, he tells them about the lady who stopped when he was 5, how she changed everything by simply seeing him. "The data is overwhelming," Sarah tells the assembly, gesturing to charts showing decreased anxiety in public spaces, increased community cohesion, economic growth in participating areas. But the stories are what matter. In Mumbai, a network of grandmothers now patrol train stations helping lost children. In London, former gang members serve as safety ambassadors in shopping districts. In São Paulo, business owners created quiet spaces for people with sensory sensitivities. She clicks to a slide showing a heat map of kindness initiatives worldwide. The earth glows with points of light, each representing a place where someone decided that compassion was infrastructure worth building. Lucas's childhood drawing had become reality. "We've learned that kindness isn't a luxury for developed nations," Sarah continues. "In refugee camps in Jordan, community care networks have reduced violence by 60%. In rural villages in Kenya, volunteer programs have created support systems that save lives. Humanity doesn't require wealth. It requires choice." After her speech, Sarah finds herself in a quiet corridor with Emma Chen. They often seek these moments of stillness, remembering where it all began. "Sometimes I can't believe this is real," Emma says. "That my panic attack in a food court led to this. Your vulnerability became strength," Sarah reminds her. "You showed the world it's okay to need help. That's more powerful than any program we've created." Emma pulls out her phone, showing Sarah a message. It's from a mother in Bangladesh whose autistic son had gotten lost in a market. Within minutes, the message reads, "Our entire community was looking for him, not because of any program, but because your story taught us that every child is our child. He was found safe, surrounded by strangers who had become family." This is what amazes Sarah most. Not the formal programs or international recognition, but the way kindness has become contagious, spreading person to person like a beneficent virus, mutating into forms suited to each community it touches. That evening, at the gala dinner, Sarah is approached by a young woman who looks familiar. It takes a moment to place her. Ashley, the woman who had tracked down Sarah's address 5 years ago to confess she'd walked past Lucas. "I wanted you to know," Ashley says. "I'm a paramedic now. Every day I stop to help. Your kindness that day didn't just ripple outward, it dove deep into some of us, changing who we chose to become." As Sarah mingles with dignitaries and delegates, she notices something beautiful. The formal gathering has become something else. People sharing stories of kindness witnessed and received, planning collaborations not between nations but between humans. The ambassador from Germany is exchanging volunteer training tips with a nonprofit leader from Nigeria. The retail executive from Japan is learning meditation room design from a mall manager from Mexico. David Chen, now in his 70s, watches it all with tears streaming down his face. "My mall," he tells anyone who will listen, "my mall started this. But really, it was Sarah. But really, it was Lucas. But really, it was all of us, waiting to remember who we are." Near midnight, Sarah steps onto a balcony overlooking New York City. The lights below twinkle like earthbound stars, each one a life, a story, a possibility. Her phone buzzes with a video message from the original Westfield Mall. It's the night security team doing their rounds. But now they stop at the spot where Lucas was found, where a small plaque reads, "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes." Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us to stop. She thinks about the woman she was 5 years ago. Overwhelmed, jobless, invisible. That woman could never have imagined this moment. But that woman had the only qualification that mattered. She couldn't walk past a crying child. Tomorrow, Sarah will fly to Athens to help design kindness infrastructure for refugee integration. Next month, she'll advise tech companies on building compassion into digital spaces. Next year, who knows? The movement has its own momentum now, guided by the simple truth that humans are wired for connection and sometimes we just need reminding. But tonight, she opens her laptop to write her daily email to the network. She's written one every day for 5 years, sharing a story of kindness witnessed or received. Tonight's is simple. Today, I watched world leaders argue about implementation strategies for compassion initiatives. Important work. But then I remembered, while they were debating, a grandmother in India was helping a lost child. A teenager in Brazil was sitting with a lonely elder. A businessman in Toronto was buying lunch for a homeless veteran. The revolution doesn't wait for permission. It happens every time we choose to see each other. Really see each other. Thank you for seeing. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for remembering that we belong to each other. She hit send, knowing it will be translated into 43 languages, read in boardrooms and classrooms, refugee camps and palaces. But mostly, it will be read by ordinary people who tomorrow will face their own moments of choice. Lucas had asked her once if she ever regretted stopping that day, if she missed her quiet, simple life. She'd hugged him tight and told him the truth. That wasn't living, sweetheart. That was just existing. You woke me up to what life really is. As she heads back inside, her phone shows one final message. It's from a mall in a small town in Iowa. A child was lost today. 7 people stopped to help. The child was reunited with his parent in under 3 minutes. No drama, no news story. Just humans doing what humans do when they remember they're human. This is success. Not the awards or recognition, but a world where lost children don't stay lost for long, where tears summon help, where kindness is as natural as breathing. A world where stopping is normal and walking past is what makes the news. Sarah smiles, thinking of her mother's words. The world changes one kindness at a time, sweetheart. She'd thought it was just a platitude, something mothers say. She knows better now. Her mother had been telling her the operating instructions for humanity. 5,000 miles away, in the original Westfield Mall, a child drops his ice cream and begins to cry. Before his mother can react, 3 strangers have already converged. One with napkins, one with comforting words, one heading to buy a replacement cone. Nobody thinks it's extraordinary. It's just what you do. And in that ordinary moment lies the entire revolution. A world where kindness isn't exceptional but expected, where compassion isn't newsworthy but normal, where we've remembered that we're all in this together, one small act at a time. The security camera captures it all, but nobody will ever review this footage. Because when kindness becomes common, it stops being remarkable. It just becomes life. And somewhere in the invisibility of that normalized compassion, Sarah Mitchell's true legacy lives on, not in programs or presentations, but in every person who hears a cry and can't help but stop. The revolution is complete when it no longer feels like a revolution, when it just feels like being human, like the video if you believe in the power of small acts. Subscribe to join a community that chooses to stop, to see, to help. Share your own story in the comments. When did someone's kindness change your day? When did you stop to help? Together, we're proving that the smallest acts of compassion can transform the world. This channel exists for those who believe we belong to each other,